Today we're going to be talking specifically about what's new in EQuIS Professional version 6.6. We just publicly released EQuIS Professional to all users this Monday the 13th, so it should be available to you to download from the downloads page of our community center. If you have any questions about that, you can certainly email our help desk at support@earthsoft.com to help you out with any sort of installation questions you might have. So our agenda for today is to discuss and really highlight some of the main points that were introduced in EQuIS Professional version 6.6. We certainly are not going to go over the exhaustive list of everything, but I just want to highlight some of the really exciting changes. The first will be the report definition language reports. Then we'll talk about the change in the way that we handle unit conversion failures. Then we'll discuss some enhancements to the report publisher form and some improvements to and some additional reports in our EQuIS Standard library. Then there's a couple other tidbits that we want to highlight, and then I'll show you what some of this stuff looks like in EQuIS Professional itself. Okay? So again, if you have any questions, you can certainly raise your hand or chat it to me in the chat window, but I will get through at least the slide part first before we talk about any sort of questions, and probably hold questions to the end. So the first thing that I wanted to highlight is the report definition language. And essentially what this is additional support for is designing your own reports. So you can design your layout in Report Builder, or SSRS, which is a Microsoft platform. And essentially you pick what your target output might be, say how you want it to look, and then you can, when you're happy with that, publish that to the database for access either from your EQuIS Professional Reports window or from the EQuIS Enterprise RDL Report Viewer widget. Notice that first top screenshot you can see this little icon right here is what the RDL reports will look like if you have them published. And we'll check out what a couple of those look like here in just a minute when we check out the demonstration. The other thing that's handy is in the EQuIS, it's also been added to the EQuIS Mini toolbar. So you can see this little drop down that's been added just to the left of the crosstab report button that'll allow you to take any window or report that you're in and view it in an existing RDL report. Okay? So there's some documentation that can help you with the RDL reports in EQuIS. If you'd like, I can certainly highlight how you get to that, but here's a link to that as well. And there are a couple of different pages in there that tell you, the more details on how you can set up those RDL reports. In addition, if you'd rather learn that in an EQuIS Academy, we do have an upcoming EQuIS Academy, I think it's 2 weeks from now, on creating RDL reports. So if you're interested in signing up for that, we do have that on our website as well. Here is an example of one of the RDL reports we'll check out here in a little bit. This is a little Sparkline Analytical Results 2 report. And basically what we see here is whatever the target data that was selected in the parameters, we're seeing the fluctuation of the data over time for each of those syslop codes. And again, that layout was designed by whoever set up that RDL report initially. So there's a lot of cool things you can do with it. Here's another example RDL report. This guy actually looks at the modules, so to determine what schema modules have been applied to a particular database. And again, it's pulling this information from an EQuIS native table and presenting it in a slightly easier to view and understand form. The next thing that I wanted to highlight is the unit conversion function, and this is something that we changed basically based on direct feedback from users, both on our community center forum and our product advisory forum. And essentially what this has changed is that old behavior of 999999999 in your report result value and report result text fields when there was a conversion factor issue has changed. Instead of that showing up, you won't even get report output. You'll get an error like you see in that screenshot to the right, telling you that there's a missing unit conversion factor. And then it'll give you more information about what the particular unit issue might be. In the example there, that's maybe a data hygiene issue more than anything else, because it looks like we've got a couple of different pH units that are in our reference values. But essentially, in order to correct that, you just need to make sure that you update your RT unit conversion factor table with the appropriate conversion factor settings for the 2 target units, and then it should be fine. The alternative to that, if maybe you're dealing with some mixed units, would be to change those units in your report parameters and either use go append or maybe set up some mixed units in your method analyte groups. So you could define that maybe all of your data would be reported in micrograms per liter, except for things like specific conductance and pH and things like that. Okay. There's also an option in the analytical results 2 report to skip any missing unit conversions, and essentially it's a little parameter that you tick on, and once you tick that on, it'll run the report. It just won't present any of the data that doesn't have the unit conversions operating correctly. Okay, but it's a very specific choice that you have to make in order to skip that unit conversion issue. The next change that we introduced is the report publisher user interface, and this is essentially very similar to what previous report publisher interfaces looked like, except instead of that floating box that would kind of get stuck behind the main professional window, it's native in the display itself, and we'll see what that looks like here in a little bit. So we've improved the interface operation and the display. We also added a functionality, a copy button, that allows you to copy an existing report. So it's made it a lot easier if you're going to be creating multiple versions of a given report that you're publishing, whether that's because you're doing some fine-tuning with set parameters or things like that, maybe behind the scenes in your ST report parameter tables. But it essentially makes it easier for you to have multiple versions of the same report that maybe do slightly different things. The other thing that we added to it as well is a little note that'll tell you if there's a dependent report DLL for any of the given things that you wish to publish, any of the given DLLs. And I'll show you what that looks like once we get into that as well. So the next thing we're going to talk through is a couple of the EQuIS report additions, and I'll describe them here and show you maybe a couple of screenshots, but we'll really check out what they look like actually in Professional, because it's easier to understand when you're looking at the data anyhow. The first is the standard project status report, and this report essentially is sort of a check-in with your facility kind of thing to tell you what kind of data might be missing, where your data gaps are. It'll tell you the number of field samples per either task code, sample date, sysloc code, or analysis location. It will tell you information that's related to your water levels and well data. It'll tell you if you've got soil samples that are missing start depths, or if you've got groundwater samples with missing screen intervals. So again, sort of identifying those data gaps, so if you need to go through and fill those in, if you can, you have sort of an at-a-glance of what that might be. Another report addition is actually 2 different reports, and they're new action level exceedance crosstab reports. So essentially the parameter interface is the same as what you would look at, or very similar to what you would look at in the action level exceedance 2 report. But when you fill out all of those selections, there are some additional parameter selections to define how you want those exceedances, if there are any, to be highlighted. And so you can select up to, I believe, 6 action levels and define their different exceedance highlightings. And what this essentially will do for you is let you create a report without having to go through the crosstab rigmarole. So the 2 different versions of this report are by row and by column. I'll show you what one of those looks like today, but you can also see the screenshot right there. It's based on a template that's built into the report. So essentially this is what your layout would look like based on all of that configuration in behind the scenes. Another report addition is the license use report, and this one's pretty cool, I think, because it'll allow your administrators to determine, what the license use might be, either in details or in summary. And I'll show you one example of what this might look like with our internal database here in a little bit. But essentially, it might help you determine if you need to maybe retire a particular license type because nobody uses it, and maybe upgrade it to one that everybody does. And you'll also be able to see how frequently folks are using individual licenses, maybe even on the user level. So you can see, identify who those frequent EQuIS users might be. So it's a pretty cool little report. The next change that we introduced, and this is really exciting, is an addition to the advanced action levels configuration. And this was created essentially to accommodate client requests to highlight detections in any crosstab reports. Frequently we'll get the question, how do I just highlight detects? Well, you can do that with an advanced action level. Essentially what you would need to do is in your DT action level lookup table, set your comparison ID to whatever your target desired detection limit might be, whether that is from your report, the report result limit, a DT result reporting detection limit, quantitation limit, or method detection limit. And in doing that, by setting that up, essentially what EQuIS will do is will say, look at your value that's been reported for any given analyte that you've defined, and compare it against that targeted detection limit, and then if it exceeds according to that particular setup, you can essentially set it up to bold. So you'll be able to bold your detections. A couple of other additions that we made that didn't really fit into other categories. You can now easily export to Excel 2016. We fixed a little compatibility issue with that. We do have full interface support for RockWorks 17, and that works beautifully. You can make all of your selections and then push that out into a RockWorks file that'll import nice and smooth. And then finally, we added the Groundwater Spatiotemporal Data Analysis Tool, or GWS Stat, and that's going to be in that Miscellaneous Exports tab. So, with that, let's hop on over to EQuIS Professional and take a look at some of these changes in real life. So the first one that I wanted to highlight is those RDL reports, or report definition language. Here's that example of that Sparkline Analytical Results 2 report that I showed you in the screenshots in the slides. But you can see this is a slightly different data set than the one that we were looking at before. I think I actually selected a parameter for maybe nasty VOCs. So this is showing us the fluctuation over time for the group of those analytes for each of those syslope codes. Here's that DB schema module example that you also saw, and you can see again in this case that we've got it's essentially pointing to the table that houses this information, but presenting it in an easier to use, and we've got our little logo at the top kind of way. So it's just a quick design on that particular report. And because I figured it would be nice to see sort of how this looks, this location parameter report is another RDL report, and by the way, you can tell that's what it is if you look at the little icon over here on the side. Notice it's got that paper with the little triangle thing. That's that RDL report icon. For this particular report, the only parameter is location. So I've asked it to select location B30, and then I'll run this report and vamp for a second, and there we go. It came up with the location parameters. And again, this is something that somebody designed specifically to include all of this data. So you can, zhuzh it up and make it as fancy as you want it to be. But this is the basics of the RDL report. Okay. So that's pretty cool. The next thing I wanted to show you was the report publishing form, and that actually has its own little button up here in the main home ribbon in the EQuIS toolbar. So I'm going to click on the reports button, and you'll notice it also has an option to publish forms. So that's really handy if you're creating your own forms. So I'll select reports, and I get the window coming up asking me to target my specific DLL. So I'm going to scroll down. You can look away if you don't want to get nauseous. And 51729 is the report DLL that I want to select. I happen to know by heart that that's the action level exceedance report set. So I'll go ahead and select open. All right, and so here's that report publisher window, and notice it's sort of just tucked itself into the rest of the workspace in EQuIS Professional. So you can see that we've got the same kind of interface as we did before, where if there is an existing report, it'll color it orange, and you can go through and check out any of the specific changes that might have happened from the last time that the report was published. Or if you come on down here and look at the bottom right there, there's the referenced assemblies. And this is telling me essentially that the report library 50943, which happens to be the Analytical Results 2 report, is an associated DLL that I would want to make sure is published as well. So it's sort of just a little highlight to you, like, hey, you need to make sure that this is this dependent report DLL is available. In addition, there's that copy selected report button. I see that Kathleen is excited to see that that's available. So essentially, you just select that button, and it'll allow you to copy it, and then you can have, your slight parameter changes that you might have determined in your individual parameters here. So you could set, you know, some custom settings, maybe default parameter selections or hide certain things or whatever, and that's something that you could certainly set up right from here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. All right, I'll go ahead and close this. I'm already getting anxious because I have so many things on my desktop, or my workspace rather. Okay, the next thing that I wanted to show you is the action level exceedance to crosstab. The one I selected this time is column-based. So I'll really quick go through and select typical parameters. So I'm going to get my Monnet Wells from good old Springfield, and I'll scroll down. And with this particular report, you also have to select an analyte group, and that's just by virtue of, there we go, by virtue of the way that the crosstab has been designed. So I'll come on over and select my nasty VOCs. Sorry, my mouse is moving about a mile an hour. Okay, and then finally, I'll go ahead and select my target action level. And you'll notice it's the action level selection is a little bit further down in the list than what you might be accustomed to, but I'll scroll on down there to the bottom, and I just need to select my action level, which I'll select as benzene. And then I have to decide how I want that to come out. And so in this case, I want it maybe to be aggressively highlighted, maybe bold and yellow fill if there's something that goes wrong with benzene. Okay, and then I run the report and twiddle my thumbs for just a moment while it gathers all of the information I've asked for. It does all of its comparing of the results to my targeted action levels, and then in a moment it'll open up Microsoft Excel. In a moment it'll open up Microsoft Excel, and we'll get to see the layout of that particular report. So now would be the time to hum your favorite waiting song. Here we go, here it comes. And it's opening on my other screen, so let me pull that up here. Oh, and I see that Kathleen has asked if there's a list of reports that have been updated from 652, so you know which reports need to be updated and republished. I think that will be in the release notes, but I can double check that for you, Kathleen. That's a good question. So here is that column-based version of that crosstab report. So you can see that it's highlighting that bold yellow shading for any circumstance where we had an exceedance for benzene based on that particular action level. And it even shows you down here what our related action levels might be. And that's really handy. So if I picked my up to 6 action levels, it would show you at the bottom your little rubric of what was what. Okay. So I'll go ahead and minimize that. That's pretty handy, and you know, it sort of skips over the having to build a crosstab part of things. Okay. The next thing that I wanted to highlight is the standard project status report, and this is pretty cool because, like I said, it essentially allows you to check out your completeness of data. And essentially, the only thing you get to select is your date range, and in this case, it's already made its best guess at the date range based on what my particular data set is for this facility. It's sort of a smart select in those terms. And so I'll go ahead and just run the report with the full length of date time. And again, it's going to query that data, and it'll come out here in Excel in a second. I'll probably have to grab it from my other screen. All right, no, I guess it's right there. Okay, so and now you can see what the standard project status report looks like. And so we have a couple of different tabs along the bottom of this report. The first one is sample counts, and so this will tell you either by location or task or things like that, basically of your sample type as or analysis location, whether that's a field, a laboratory, or what have you, and the number of samples that you have for each of those syslog codes and tasks and locations. So that's pretty cool. The next thing you can check out is your water levels data. Just eyeball that and see if you've got any gaps like we see here. Looks like we didn't record some water level data on September of 2016. You can check out missing soil depth. So it looks like there's a couple of results that we have in there that don't have soil depth. Problematic. Hopefully we've got field forms to fill that in. And then finally we've got the groundwater samples that are missing any sort of screen interval information. So again, this report, the layout isn't super fancy, but it at least allows you to get to see what kind of information you might be missing that you might need to fill in an existing data set. And that's basically based on facility level. Okay, the last report that I wanted to show you is the license use report, and I really like this one just because it allows you to look at your license use by a lot of different ways. So I selected summary by user, that's the default selection, but you have all of these other choices as well. So you can look at a lot of different ways that licenses are being consumed by your EQuIS users. So I'll go ahead and run that report, and you'll notice it doesn't take very long for that to spit out some information for us. Let me spread out some of these so I can see them a little better. Essentially what we see here is each of the license titles. In this particular one, we can see each user who's used them and how many times they've consumed it under the counts, and whether it's a professional or an enterprise license. So I can scroll down, pick on, looks like Benjamin's been really busy and professional. It's hanging out in the 20s of using the ultimate license. I think Sandy might be the winner of this data set if I scroll down a little bit further. She's in the 80s. You got 50 there. Yep, 95. I lied. Sandy has 95 uses of professional ultimate in the last whatever that time frame was that I could have selected in those parameters. Okay, but it's really handy to be able to just see, you know, who uses what and how many times they've used it and that kind of thing. So Kathleen asks, does the license report have the option to run across multiple databases? I don't know, Kathleen. That's a good question. I don't think so. That would be my gut reaction, but I can find out for sure from our development team. All right, so that is really the sort of quick overview of those changes in EQuIS Professional. Oh, I did want to show you where you can find more information on the report definition language. So the little embedded help button up here, that little question mark in the upper right corner, if I click on that, oh, of course it opens on my other screen. And I'll bring that up here. There we go. If I open up the reports section, there's a whole section on RDL reports, and you can see that we've got help sort of walking you through how to design your RDL report, how to publish it, and then that report viewer. So if you want to check out more information about that, you can certainly access that once you've installed EQuIS Professional, or you can go to that link that I provided earlier. That'll point you directly to the help file that we've published on our community center. Okay. All right, so I guess I can hop on back to my slides and see us out. There's one more thing that I wanted to highlight, and that's those professional release notes. So that link there at the top will show you the exhaustive list of everything that was updated in Professional. This is by no means what I've talked about, everything. There's pages and pages of changes. Also detailing things like reports. So hopefully that'll have all of them, but I'll find out. I also wanted to point out we've got some more upcoming office hours of the What's New series. DQM is next week, followed by SPM and then Edge to finish out that series. So I guess I'll look and see if we've got any more questions. And it looks like Lacey has asked, does this require a database update? Yes, Lacey, I think there is a schema update related to some of the table changes. I don't know what they are specifically, but I'm pretty sure there's a database update. Good question. All right, so does anybody else have any questions? Brian asks, will Professional 562 work with a version 6.6 database? That's a good question. We haven't tested it. It might work. You will get a notice when you connect to an alternate version database, basically at the top of your Professional menu bar saying, you know, the schema doesn't match, like the schema version doesn't match your Professional installation version, sort of a little warning for you. I would say that the official answer is it's not supported, but it might work. If there aren't any more questions, I'll go ahead and end today's office hour. So thank you so much, everyone, for attending, and I hope we get to see you at our next office hour.